They need to respect the artists they say they're honoring, which they don't.
Why the hell isn't Toto in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Because they hate our guts and have since 1978.
The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is not the hall of the people. It's a small group of guys who decide who they want and who they don't, and then they decide what the rules are for you that don't apply to anybody else.
So we all have asked ourselves, all us musicians out there, we've asked ourselves many times, what's the criteria? How do you get into the Hall of Fame? Well, Foreigner has had 9 mega hits in the top 100 in Billboard. 9 mega hits, not 9, okay? They could have been in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 20 years ago.
The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is broken, and we're going to prove it. What was supposed to be music's highest honor has become a rigged game run by industry insiders, personal grudges, and a voting system designed to ignore fans completely. In this video, you're going to see how artists are being charged $10,000 just to bring their own bandmates to their induction ceremony. A voting system where 330,000 fan votes count for less than 0.1%. Legends blacklisted for decades over personal grudges. This isn't one bad year. This is a system built to fail. Let's break it down. In 2016, Steve Miller should have been having the best night of his career. The man behind The Joker, Fly Like an Eagle, and Abracadabra was finally getting his due after 23 years of eligibility. Instead, he walked into what he called a nightmare.
When they told me I was inducted, they said you can have 2 tickets, one for your wife and one for yourself. Want another one? It's $10,000. Sorry, that's the way it goes. They said, I'm playing here. What about my band? What about their wives? What about... They make this so unpleasant that they came this close. No, we're not going to wrap this one up. I'm going to wrap you up. You go sit down over there and learn something. So here's what you need to know. This is how close this whole show came to not happening because of the way the artists were actually being treated right now.
Let that math sink in. You're being honored as a rock legend. You're literally performing at the ceremony, and if you want your own band there, the people who helped you become a legend, you better open your checkbook. And this wasn't a Steve Miller special. Cheap Trick's guitarist Rick Nielsen made the same point during his own induction, joking that the ticket prices were so high he couldn't afford to bring his 9 grandchildren.
In the next 2 months, I should be at number 8 and number 9 grandchildren. And thank you for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for charging so much that I didn't have to bring them all out here.
But here's what's truly insane. While artists are being nickel and dimed for seats, ticket prices for regular fans have reached astronomical levels. Sometimes north of $1,000 for the cheapest options. The hall is making millions off these ceremonies while treating the honorees like an inconvenience. So you might be wondering, who actually decides who gets into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Surely it's based on album sales, right? Cultural impact, maybe a fan vote. Here's where it gets ugly.
So I really want to know how, so there's 15 nominees right now. I want to know how those 15 nominees first got picked.
Yeah, Austin, it's a really interesting process. So we have a nominating committee who meets every year in New York to sort of hash out who's going to be on the ballot. They send out the ballot to all the current living inductees. So Paul McCartney gets a ballot, Diana Ross gets a ballot, and then a few hundred other industry professionals, musicians, experts, scholars, critics, and then they all cast their vote. Then actually we have the fan vote, which comprises 1 ballot that gets a vote as well.
And did you catch that? The fan vote, which in 2025 saw over 330,000 people vote for Fish, gets compressed into exactly 1 ballot. Out of over 1,200 total ballots, that's less than 0.1% influence. When Fish crushed the fan vote this year with 50,000 more votes than the runner-up, they still got snubbed. Same thing happened to Dave Matthews Band in 2020. They dominated the public vote and didn't get inducted until 4 years later. The Rock Hall's own chairman, John Sykes, defended this by saying they don't want fan clubs lobbying their artist into the hall. Meanwhile, a secret committee of 30 to 40 insiders meets behind closed doors to decide whose careers matter. No transparency, no accountability. Just vibes from people who, as Ozzy Osbourne once put it, have never bought an album or a concert ticket in their lives. If you want proof that personal grudges shape this institution more than musical merit, just ask Steve Lukather. Toto won 6 Grammys in a single night in 1983, including Album of the Year and Record of the Year. Africa remains one of the most recognizable songs ever recorded. It's been streamed billions of times. They've sold over 40 million records. And yet,
Why the hell isn't Toto in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Because they hate our guts and have since 1978. Now, the interesting part about that is that for the first time in 43 years, I was just called to do an interview for Rolling Stone. And I asked my PR people,
Really?
Is this a setup?
Listen, we turned down the cover of Rolling Stone at a time that we knew we were walking into a wood chipper. The guys hated us. We had a #1 record. We were up for all the Grammys, and we got a little full of ourselves and said, "Fuck you, Jan."
that's Jan Wenner he's talking about, the co-founder of Rolling Stone magazine and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. For decades, Wenner essentially controlled who got in and who didn't. And if you crossed him, good luck. In 2023, Wenner was finally removed from the Hall's board, not for his decades of alleged cronyism, but for telling the New York Times that black and female artists didn't articulate at the level of the white male musicians in his book.
It's not that they're inarticulate, although go have a deep conversation with Grace Slick or Janice. Please be my guest. You know, Joni was not a philosopher of rock and roll. She didn't, in my mind, meet that test.
He spoke similarly about black artists.
Black artists, I mean, Stevie Wonder, incredibly, they're genius, right? These are genius artists. I mean, I suppose when you use a word as broad as the Masters, fault is using that word, but maybe Marvin Gaye. I could cut Curtis Mayfield, they just didn't articulate at that level.
The vote to remove him was nearly unanimous, but his influence had already shaped decades of selections. And bands like Toto, who dared to turn down his magazine's cover, learned that in the Rock Hall, pettiness has a longer memory than platinum records. Kiss is one of the most iconic rock bands in history. They've sold over 100 million records. Their live shows literally invented modern arena spectacle. They were eligible for the Hall of Fame starting in 1999. They didn't get inducted until 2014. 15 years of waiting.
I think we're the bitter pill that they had to swallow. At some point, their credibility is so in question because it's 14 years since we've been eligible. If I've done anything, I hope that I've shown people the little man behind the levers in The Wizard of Oz, because the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is not the hall of the people. It's a small group of guys who decide who they want and who they don't, and then they decide what the rules are for you that don't apply to anybody else.
Paul Stanley isn't just venting here. He's exposing a fundamental truth. The Hall applies different standards to different artists based on, well, nobody really knows what. When Kiss finally got inducted, the Hall only recognized the 4 original members, ignoring musicians who'd played on multi-platinum albums for decades. But when Metallica got inducted, Robert Trujillo was included despite only being on one album that had just dropped. Same inconsistency with the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Josh Klinghoffer. The rules seemed to change based on who's doing the asking. But the most damning indictment came when Steve Miller sat down for a longer interview after his induction nightmare. What he described wasn't just disappointing, it was dystopian.
There is no Hall of Fame. There was no party. They didn't introduce any of the inductees or the inductors. We never saw each other. There never was a little thing where they said, hey, this is the Hall of Fame and we're raising money and we're doing these music education programs and all that stuff. It was like, shut the fuck up. If you don't do what we tell you to do, we're going to cut you from the show. And we go, really? Cut us from the show.
It's okay.
And then they'd say, all right, we're not going to cut you from the show and you can have 5 tickets for the band. Fuck you. We want tickets for the band, the wives and stuff. It just went on, and it was 3 months of insults and bullshit.
3 months. From the moment he got the call to the night of the ceremony, Miller says he was treated like a problem to be managed rather than a legend to be honored. And when he finally walked into the venue,
I never was introduced to the Black Keys. I didn't know who they were personally.
Right.
I walked in through security, and there's this guy looking at me, like making goo-goo eyes at me or something. And I walk up to him, and I go, what are you doing? What are you doing tonight? And he says, oh, I'm reading your speech. I said, oh, great. I said, well, I can't wait to get the fuck out of here.
Right.
That's what I said to him.
Yeah.
The Black Keys were his inductors, the people giving the speech about his legacy. And he literally didn't know who they were because nobody bothered to make an introduction. When Kiss finally got their induction, you'd think they would have performed. It's rock and roll's biggest night. These are showmen who breathe fire and spit blood on stage. But they refused, and here's why.
Because we had too much pride in this lineup, which is Kiss, and has been Kiss for 20 years. And for us to go on stage, they were demanding, quite honestly, that we play with the 2 original guys, Peter and Ace. And at this point, that would be demeaning to the band.
The Hall didn't just want Kiss to perform. They wanted to dictate who would be on that stage. The current lineup, which had been touring the world to millions of fans, wasn't good enough. The Hall wanted the nostalgic version, regardless of what the band wanted. And the hypocrisy? Other bands got entirely different treatment. Some acts were allowed to include recent members. Others were forced to exclude people who'd been with them for decades. No consistency, no logic, just whatever the Hall decided that year. You'd think once you finally get inducted, the bitterness fades. The night is supposed to be a celebration. But even at the ceremony itself, artists can't help but point out the absurdity. In 2024, Sammy Hagar took the stage to induct Foreigner, and within seconds it became clear this wasn't going to be a typical speech.
I'm here to induct Foreigner into the Hall of Fame. Yeah. That being said, the first thing I want to do is congratulate the fans, the Foreigner fans, because you guys had a lot to do with getting this done. It was more like a abduction than an induction, you know. Anyway, first things first. So we all have asked ourselves, all us musicians out there, we've asked ourselves many times, what's the criteria? How do you get into the Hall of Fame? You know, what do you need to do? What do you have to have done?
And then Sammy started listing the receipts.
You got to have at least one big hit, right? One big hit song, right? Well, Foreigner has had 9 mega hits in the top 100 in Billboard. 9 mega hits, not 9, okay? Boom, qualified. Okay, number 2, should have like a gold record, a platinum record, you know, a million-selling record. I think that would do. Well, here comes Foreigner with 80 million records sold. 6 top 10 albums, including Foreigner 4, my favorite album of theirs, which spent 10 weeks at number 1, okay? Qualified, right? Boom, okay? All right. Then I think being around long enough, they're eventually going to bring you in. You know what I mean? It's like it may take some time. So I think the longer you can be around, longevity is probably a good factor, right? Well, they formed in '77. They're still filling arenas and arenas and amphitheaters around the country. And it is not even any original members. That's how good the songs were. That's how good the music is, okay? Come on now, all right? They could have been in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 20 years ago. It's all right. They're here now, so it's okay.
20 years ago, Foreigner had 9 top 100 hits, 80 million records sold, still packing venues almost 50 years later, and the Hall made them wait until 2024. Sammy delivered that speech with a smile, but make no mistake, he was reading the institution its own rap sheet, and the crowd knew it. It's not just American artists who think the Hall is a joke. When Oasis got nominated in 2024, Liam Gallagher didn't exactly roll out the red carpet. Fuck the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it's full of bumbaclarts. When a fan urged him to campaign for votes, telling him American fans were dominating the poll, Liam's response was perfect. Don't waste your time, our kid, as much as it's appreciated, it's all a load of bollocks. Then in 2025, Oasis got nominated again. Liam's take? Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is for wankers. A fan asked, what are you going to do if you win? Obviously go and say it's the best thing ever. And honestly, that might be the most accurate summary of how artists view the Rock Hall. It's a joke, until they win. Then it's the greatest honor in music. The whole thing has become so transparently absurd that even the nominees are openly mocking it while simultaneously hoping to get in. So where does this leave us? Iron Maiden, one of the most influential metal bands in history, eligible since 2005, has been nominated 11 times and never inducted.
My friend Nico McBrain from the Iron Maiden, they've been nominated 11 times.
It's just unbelievable. It's a travesty, really.
Yeah, it is. And they should really be. They're a great band.
Agreed.
So I don't know. I think it was a little bit political. I can't really go into any depth. I don't honestly 100% know.
11 nominations, 0 inductions. For one of the most influential metal bands in history. And even fellow Rock Hall inductees are calling it what it is. Iron Maiden's management reportedly told the Hall to stop nominating them entirely. Bruce Dickinson called it an utter and complete load of bollocks and said he'd refuse the induction even as a corpse. Cher, when she finally got inducted in 2024 after being eligible since 1990, joked that it was easier getting divorced from 2 men than getting into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The Sex Pistols sent a profanity-laced letter calling the museum a piss stain. Axl Rose refused to attend Guns N' Roses' induction. Even Paul McCartney skipped the Beatles ceremony. When this many legendary artists view your institution as a joke, maybe the institution is the problem. The real Hall of Fame isn't in Cleveland, it's in the music that refuses to die. If you want more stories like this, subscribe.